our CEO, and we'll come up here in a minute. Before I even dive into kind of introducing some of the content and what we're going to cover this afternoon, I do want to say thank you to Erin. There she is. Erin, thanks for pulling this off, and great decorations and food and bar and all that kind of stuff. So, as well as invites and people here. Today we're talking about cybersecurity, and it's a topic that is common in the marketplace today. You hear about the big breaches, you hear about the Apples, the Facebooks, the big companies around the world that are having those kind of experiences. The reality of it is all of us in this room as leaders, as business owners, as people in this space, and especially in that small to mid-market space, we are the targets of these hackers. And so what we're trying to do is build and increase the awareness around that, and make sure that you are understanding kind of what are the business takeaways, the executive view, what that means to you and your business, and what kind of things you ought to be doing today. So that's what we're trying to walk through and make sure we accomplish today. From an Alcom perspective, there's a lot of technology firms out there. I would say 99% of them all start with hey, I'm a computer guy and I fix computers, and they really don't connect to your business and what you're trying to accomplish in terms of your goals and where you're headed. So we've got a model, and the way we operate is really been able to flip that. And that's exactly why we're having conversations with all of you today. And it's not a technical conversation. It's very much a business conversation around the data you have internally that you need to protect, the data that you have in terms of client data that needs to be protected, and what are some of those best practices. So our goal today is for you guys to be able to walk away with some tools and information that allow you to have a better, more informed conversation with your IT group, whoever that may be, however you're doing that today, to be able to have those conversations around how you're protecting client data. And that's really kind of the focus. So as we're going through this, feel free to jump in with questions, interject, clarifying questions and so forth like that, and then we'll get started with that. So today, as part of this event, we've got it's a joint effort between Alcom and Allied Insurance. We've got Chris here from Allied. We also have Taras in the back, who's going to be speaking about some cyber liability mitigation strategies around leveraging insurance as part of that component. And as I said, Brent's going to kick it off. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Brent, and we'll get started. Cool.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate it. Other thing, there's restrooms outside the door there if you need any. Drinks and food are still going the whole time, so enjoy. This is going to be somewhat informal. Hopefully you take some stuff out of here that you can use. So we broke this. We've done this presentation a couple different times where we kind of jump into cybersecurity and what it really means and how it's impacting business. We changed this one around a little bit just to give a little more insight into why these are even happening. Like, what's going on, what are the motivators, and what's kind of triggering these things from happening. So when we look at why do they happen, number one is financial gain, right? It's a $6 billion industry now. These hackers are out there selling records, personally identifiable information. They're selling social security numbers, they're selling emails, they're selling accounts, they're selling username and passwords. So there is money to be made in this market, which is kind of driving a lot of it. But what people don't realize is that there's also a lot of other reasons that are happening out there. Making a social or political point. People are doing this like Anonymous. They do this where they come out there and they say, we're going to try to shape and influence how people are seeing things or viewing things because we don't think the way the information is getting out today is accurate. There are companies that are spying on other companies that are just looking at how do we understand some of their IP, their intellectual property, how can we create their product faster, or at least be second to market pretty quick once they invest all the R&D. And then there's the challenges out there. There's what we call the white hats, which are these, I don't want to say they're hackers, but they are very technically savvy individuals that have some kind of passion or drive to try and solve some of these challenges. Break into the system for a company, do an audit for a bank, whatever it is, they're out there trying to hack as well. And then they feed that information into the system. Unfortunately, with that side of the equation, and this is where a lot of problems come from, these white hat hackers Facebook will do a contest and they'll say, hey, we'll pay anybody $50,000 to break into our system. And then that gets put out there or published. And they say, here's a vulnerability that we found. That's now public knowledge that that vulnerability is out there and nobody patches their system. So everybody has that time from when it's released to the time until they patch it to actually get into the system without any challenge. So although it's great that they're finding these, it still creates a lot of problem for most businesses to manage. So these are most of the reasons when we look at financial, really what we're talking about, what we know. They're looking at financial details, they're looking at customer lists, they're looking at customer databases, they're looking at any sensitive information that you have. Do you have social security? Do you have medical information? Medical's actually going down now because so many medical records have been stolen that they're not as valuable anymore. That's how many, almost all, like everybody's, they're out there. So the price is going down. So now it's different records that are kind of coming up and getting people interested in hacking again in other types of industries. So emails and login credentials are huge, and we'll get to that in a second, but they're after that. That's what they want to find, those email and login credentials for anybody. So that's why they're happening, but in most cases we think, well, we just heard about the Facebook one, we've heard about the iCloud hacks, we've heard about Target being hacked, we've heard of Equifax being hacked, lost 300 million records. So we think that those are the targets. No, those are just press-worthy. That's all they are. Those are easy to talk about when a big company makes a mistake and they lose your information. Everyone in the media wants to jump onto it. They're not who these people are going after because Facebook has a lot more security invested and dollars invested in security than any of our companies do, any small, mid-market, even enterprise company does. So we're hearing about that just because it seems like an interesting story, but that's not really what's happening out there. So when we look at what's really happening, who are they going after? Who are they trying to attack? It's private companies for sure. Private companies, 63% of all the hacks are in private companies. And then when you look at the size of the company, almost 50% of it is under the 500 million, and a huge percentage under 50. So 32% under 50. So I'm sorry, 25% alone, just under 50. So the vast majority of attacks, when you add all those numbers up, are happening in small, mid-market, private companies, which is kind of all, for the most part, all of us. There are some, obviously big public companies are going after that people hear about, but there's only 10,000 of them. There's 10 million of us, right? So the numbers shake out that they are going after these small companies. And another reason they're doing it is that when you look at like the Target hack, they didn't go through Target, they went through an HVAC company, a small HVAC company that didn't have any security in place. Target just didn't have any policies in place, so they let everyone have access. So they got into the HVAC company, Target said, welcome to our team, come on site, here's access to our systems, and the hackers were there and they just jumped in and took all the data that they wanted. And that was, I don't remember what it ended up costing Target in that situation, but that was pretty much my credit card got taken. I don't know if your guys' did. So this is happening kind of all the time, and it's in the small mid-market. And generally speaking, it's financial incentive unless you have some pretty big angry customers out there, and then it could be espionage. But for the most part, that's who they're after. And we look at industry. We think they're going after finance companies, they're going after health companies. That's where the money is, and that's where the records they're buying are. Well, that's not actually true anymore. They're spreading out their attacks to go after multiple industries because, like I said, the financial incentives in health aren't there anymore. They don't make as much money as they used to make. They used to make like $360 a record or something. Now it's like $232, whatever the final numbers are, but they just don't make as much money anymore. So they're going after different industries. You still see big things in healthcare, you still see big things in finance, but retail's huge for those credit card accounts. They're doing a ton of credit card processing in retail. They want that information. And plus they want to know what your buying habits are, they want to know who you are, they want to know social security number. They can get that anywhere, not just healthcare or financial services companies. So the takeaways really from kind of what's going on out there is that there's still a lot of money to be made in it, and they're going after a lot more small, mid-sized private companies in a lot more industries than people really think they or give them credit for. So it's a real threat, it's a serious threat. We see it all the time. If you came in through and you walked around today, we have a display in our Network Operations Center, and it shows all the attacks that are currently going on. And you can see the countries that are generating most of the attacks that are happening right now and what's going on. And it's pretty slow right now because it's quiet, it's nighttime, over in Europe and Asia right now. But if you were here long enough tonight where you see when like Asia comes online, when China comes online, the attacks skyrocket. So you can see real time kind of what's happening out there, and this is who they're aiming those attacks at. So Can anyone guess what I want to dump into now why or what's happening? How are they getting in? Because I also think there's some misconception around hackers being this very, very sophisticated, intelligent group of people that are like a nation state, going after these large companies. So can anyone guess what the most common reason that people actually steal data is?
The most common what?
Weak and stolen passwords. That's hackers. You just have a really bad password. Like, look at these are the top 10 passwords out there that are hacked all the time. This is the latest, right? So 2017. If you're on here, if you have one of these, change it, please. Like 2 years ago, 8 of these all were numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's just the top of the keyboard. QWERTY is just the next row. These aren't challenging. This is why it's easy to get in. Football's a big one. Maybe that's now, I don't know, but that's a big one, and I love you is a big one. Let me in. Clever, but everyone uses it. But that's why it's easy. So hacks don't necessarily have to be sophisticated. Hackers don't have to be sophisticated. You're giving away all of your information. And then complicate it with the fact that everyone, for an executive nowadays, you have to remember about 80 passwords just to do your job. So there's a couple courses of action there. It's either start writing them down in like Excel or use like 4 passwords for every account you have. Problem there is that there will be a site you use that password on that is not secure. And they will get hacked, and then every place you've used that password now is hacked. So you have to be careful. We do, something we suggest all the time, we do it here, I do it personally, is a password manager. That will eliminate the number one reason that accounts are hacked is just get a password manager. They create really, really complex passwords. They take care of logging into the sites for you. All you remember is one, and all of your sites have really complex passwords, and it makes it very, very easy to manage. So that's a freebie, but that's a really good way to avoid the number one common reason. Some of the other ones. And the funny thing about this, I'll go over some of these and I'll give you some examples, but most of these are not technology issues. Most of these are process and people issues. Most hacks are because of process. They're not because of somebody didn't have the latest and greatest technology to avoid a hacker. It's because this backdoors application vulnerabilities. It's because somebody out there found it, told everybody in the world about it, and then nobody in the company did anything. Equifax, they lost, I can't remember the number, I think it was hundreds of millions of records that they lost. The issue that they got in for was an Apache who is a software vendor, a very large software vendor. They said, hey, we have this vulnerability. Everybody, you need to do something about it. There's a vulnerability, here's patches, everybody do it. That was I think that was 3 months before the hack happened at Equifax, and they never patched it. That's not a technology issue. That's a process issue. So when you look at weak and stolen credentials, again, mostly process, mostly people. Malware and CryptoLocker is clicking links, right? So send you an email and you don't know what it is and you have to open it and you got to see what it is. Stop doing that. But in all fairness, your system shouldn't be vulnerable because you click on a link. There is technology that can solve that issue, but again, it is corporate education. If, for example, social engineering, this is an easy one. So if I don't know how many employees you have, but I think once you get to the point where you have maybe 50 plus, people stop talking as much internally. So if you leave an envelope that says confidential on it on the floor and you put, say, a jump drive in it, once you hit a certain size company, they'll just plug it in and see what it is. So I could go easily to any company and just drop that on the ground and get inside that company. It's not even a challenge, really. So if you don't have a policy that says don't plug things into your computer, or at least ask IT or your tech team if I can do this or I can't do this, that's a big issue. And that has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with process. Again, this is too many permissions. I mentioned that. That credential manager will help. Password manager will help. That'll solve that issue very, very rapidly. Insider threats is undervalued, I think. They say that 60% of people admit to taking information from their company when they leave. And then 38% said they'll do it again. That's a lot of people that will take information before they leave. And the thing is, they'll take it before they give you their notice. So they have everything they need when they tell you that they no longer want to work there anymore. So you have to make sure that when you start having some internal kind of assumptions that somebody may not be that happy, involve IT. start turning on auditing, start finding out what's going on and what they're doing and what they're accessing and how they're accessing it, because they will, 60%, so I'm going to say they will, take information before they leave. And the FBI even says that insider threats, data theft from employees, is now the fastest growing crime in the United States. That has nothing to do with external cybersecurity. That's just your people. And you think that it won't happen, and we do another one that's only on internal. So this is all external, but we do one that's only on internal. And the thing is that situations change. Something may happen. Somebody may get sick. Somebody may have medical expenses. Somebody may get angry. You know, there are situations that change that turn good people into somebody that will take it. And the 90% of people that took it, their justification, well, nobody told me I can't, right? That's another easy one. Put a policy. You cannot take information from the company. The other ones are physical attacks. You know, if you have access to your data center, if somebody can walk into your room and turn it off, you know, that's a bad thing. You know, eliminate the physical by not letting them have access to it. And then the proper configuration and user error. When you say that, and we see this all the time, most files aren't lost because of an attack. They're lost because somebody hit delete and said, oops, sorry, I need that back. That's where most data loss comes from, is just 80% user error, hitting delete or doing a configuration that blows stuff up. Although there is obviously a huge threat out there from the cyber side. So we had now a customer of ours. They didn't start as a customer of ours. And they had this issue where their credit cards kept getting taken. So the numbers kept getting used. They would pop up there, they'd get an alert, and they'd said, this happened to me twice. I had to change 2 credit cards, you know, because I had one of the ones that went in Target, and I think one was Home Depot. So they're getting a call from their bank, hey, we get all these charges out of some country, you know, what's going on? We have no idea. Cancel all our cards, issue everyone out a new card, right? And they had very strict policies. They only had a very, you know, tight group of people within the company, and this was a B2C kind of services model, a residential services company. Wouldn't think as a high target. So they issued out new credit cards to everybody. Another month goes by. Same exact thing. The credit cards are stolen again. There's somebody out there making, you know, charges again. So they go through another round. And they cut off all access to the cards, and they lock it down a little bit tighter and issue new cards out. So we came in, and we're working with them now, and we figured out that it wasn't somebody stealing the credit. Well, yes, of course, the credit cards were being stolen, but it was a combination of process and technology. So what was happening, and what the ultimate cause was, is that somebody had hacked their printer inside the office. And because their controller was too tight with their credit cards, people were making photocopies of the credit cards, so they didn't have to ask their controller for their credit card. So now, every time they made a photocopy, the hackers got their credit card again. So and these type things are pretty common out there. And unfortunately, they what they decided to do is fix the printer, which solved the. I think we fixed it, or they may have done it right before we got there. But before that, because they weren't having any luck processing these credit cards, because they kept getting like reissued, this controller was right on it. Like, check every bill that comes in. That's not right. Cancel their credit card. Put a new one out there. So they said, all right, well, we can't make any money on credit cards. So they tried to extort them, and they sent a nonstop stream of adult material to the printer, and said, pay us or we won't stop. So we shut that off. But anyway, those are the common causes. Again, it's not challenging. It's really not challenging to hack. I'm not a hacker, but I've been in this industry 20 years. It's not that hard. It's pretty easy. Not many companies are secure. I've walked into almost every health company that I've walked into, and they have to be HIPAA compliant, and none of them are HIPAA compliant. I mean, it's challenging to create the processes and policies and manage people to be secure and be compliant. It's difficult. So it's not that there's sophisticated people out there. It's easy to get money right now. So the real impact, I'm going to blow through this one really quick because I do want to get to Tomas here, and I don't want to take up all of our time with mine. But this is a study that was by Deloitte. It was called Beneath the Surface of a Cyber Attack. It was a really interesting study because up until this 2016 study, there was a hard challenge with businesses quantifying the real cost of a breach. We kind of speculated at what it would be. We thought we kind of understood the cost. We thought we knew how much it was. And it was, and I'm not going to make you read this, I'll switch to another slide, but we knew about this, right? We knew on the top, above the surface, we knew that we're going to have to tell everybody. You know, we have to do notifications, especially if you're a larger company, it's mandated, but you should anyway. If you lose your data, if I lost anybody's data, we would let them know. You have some customer protection potentially, you know, some like credit monitoring or something that you may want to volunteer to do if it's personally identifiable information. Public relations, you got to tell everybody you're not that bad, it was just a mistake. You know, we'll fix it next time. investigations, all that stuff. We knew about all this stuff. And HIPAA compliancy fines and some of the FINRA and like all those financial institution fines and all that. But what we didn't understand was what else comes in there, because 60% of businesses that have an attack that are small go out of business. Well, if we know all of these and we can plan for it, then why are we going out of business? Like, what's happening? So Deloitte finally came and said, look, here's what we're seeing for the 5-year long-term impact of one of these security breaches. We're seeing that it does impact client contracts, especially renewals and client contracts. Your cost to raise debt is going up because you're now a higher threat and you're a risk. Your cost of insurance and your premiums go up. So now we're able to actually quantify all of these issues from a financial impact. And what that translates to, and I'll just give you a couple real quick examples. Here was one, and it was a financial institution, a health system, and they thought we were going to lose about $59 million because of this breach. They lost $1.62 billion that they didn't know about, because they weren't able to put a financial model around how does that impact my business. Another one, so if you're a $6 million company, and in comparison, it's about $160,000 for a breach. That's huge for a $6 million company, right? So look at another example here. There's an engineering firm. This one was funny because all they took is their IP, and then they pushed it out to a nation state that didn't have any IP laws, and they redid all their products for them, and they take 80% of their clients. It was just IP. They lost about $4 million. If they were a $4 million company, it's about $323,000 to do this. But 99%, they didn't know. They couldn't forecast and they couldn't predict. It almost put them out of business. Luckily, it didn't, because they were big enough. They were big enough, and they had to let go of half their staff. And that's how they survived. But again, it's a huge financial impact that we're seeing right now that we didn't really plan for. But now Deloitte came out, and I'd urge you to take a look at it. Deloitte came out, and they put together a great study that showed over a 5-year span how to quantify that. So, we said that 60% of companies aren't able to sustain an attack over 6 months. That's because they don't understand the cost and the impact. And then when we get to the punishment industry, basically on average for a small business to clean up, right now they're saying the average is about $690,000. And the small business is for how they do is like 50 to 100 million. So for, we're smaller than that, it's under that. But it is a lot of money that's being spent on kind of dealing with the aftermath of some of these attacks. So that is what I have for you. I would love to, well, actually, you know what I want to do? Sorry, I forgot about this, Tomas. I'll be real quick. Before we end, or after we end, we're going to send out a wrap-up kind of all of what we talked about in the slide deck, so you have that. And I'm going to include in there 3 tools about what do we do. So great, that's, companies are easy to get into. A lot of people are going after this money, and it's easy to hack. Now what, right? So besides Agnes, we're going to send you 3 things. One of them is a security risk assessment tool. So I would say the first step is understand, do you have any data that's valuable? What even matters if you lose it? Because most people think everything they have is valuable. That's not. You can get everything on the internet right now. But so look at your very specific intellectual property that you have that's important, and look at your customer data that's sensitive and your employee data that's sensitive. Try to really define what data is important that you have out there. Once you can define what data is important, you need to talk, and this is a conversation with IT to understand what data you first have, and then what's important, right? So you got to start that open dialogue, not around the, hey, what are you doing to protect me? But hey, what do we have that we even care about protecting? Start there. And then from there, jump into where are we today? This is a quick assessment you can go through and just sit down with IT and check boxes. We have this, we don't have this. And we put it into a group, basic, moderate, high. So if you are regulated to protect it, hopefully you're doing these things on the high side. If you're non-regulated industry, at least cover the basics and get them done. But here's a couple things to check off and say, yes, we have this, no, we don't have that. We have an idea of where we stand today. And then the last thing is, security is not technology only. Technology is a component of it, and the things you're doing are a component of that. But your readiness as an organization from a corporate governance standpoint to implement and control some of these processes is a determining factor on if you will or will not be secure. So this is just a business readiness assessment. Where do you stand on, does anyone in the company know what security is? Does everyone in the company think it's a part of the culture? Security is our culture, right? And a progression through those steps in a number of categories. So it's just a quick kind of gut check on, can we do this right now, or at least where do we start and how can we progress to get to a point where security is a part of who we are and we protect data all the time. So that is my stuff, and I'm going to hand it over to Tomas. So thank you very much. Before you start, Tomas, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Grab this right here.
Oh, your alcohol? Sure. Absolutely. I wouldn't leave that guy behind. So my name is Suraj Chalet. I have been doing cyber liability for over a decade now. I try to bring a unique perspective to prospects and clients in that in the cyber industry, I started as an underwriter who created a product. Then I became a broker who sold over 100 different products. And now I'm an insurance agent that's able to advise and consult on the products to you guys. So we'll start with that, with the cyber and privacy liability. So how we all started was in 2003. California decided to come out with a law, and if you can kind of remember, think back 15 years ago, if we saw a fraudulent charge on our credit card, we would call, let's say, Visa, and Visa would say, prove it. How do we know you didn't make that purchase in China? Now you call Visa and they automatically reimburse your account. They say, we're putting red flags everywhere, we're taking care of it moving forward. Kind of started in 2003 when there were so many fraudulent charges building up that the credit card companies and California residents decided to shift the liability from us as consumers to the actual business owners. So what that means is if I go into your business and in order to conduct business, you say, I need your personal information. I need your social security number. I need your credit card information. Whatever it might be, once it goes from me to you, now the liability has shifted if you are found to have lost that information. Right after that, a year later, started the payment card industry data security standard. So at that time, every single credit card company was working independent from each other. So Visa could only see fraudulent purchases on Visa, MasterCard, all of them. And finally, they said, we're going to get everything together and we're going to be able to review all of the data together. By doing this, they can run algorithms very quickly and they can see, oh, in the last 6 months, we've had all these fraudulent charges and they were all the customer of Qdoba at 16 in Rochester. Hypothetically, don't. I like Qdoba, nothing wrong with it. But that's how they're able to easily detect as far as payment card through the credit cards. Now there is a difference between cyber breach and data breach. A cyber breach, and we use these terms commonly, but cyber breach is when someone else is able to access into your business systems. Someone from an outside location is able to penetrate and break through the firewalls or whatever it may be to gather information. But a data breach can include paper files. This is just the actual release of data. So once you have your information in your system, even if you send an email to a friend that you misspelled the name and it went to someone else, once that information leaves, that's out. And that's not a cyber breach, that's just a data breach. So some sobering statistics. On average, it'll cost a U.S. organization $225 per record. So if you think as a business owner, if you have over 5,000 records, that's quickly over $1 million of your exposure. Now this is cost per record uninsured. If you are insured, it greatly reduces it because they use third-party vendors to quickly remediate the costs. Now, criminal and vicious attacks are the most costly at $236, but they only make up 47% of the breaches. System glitch and human error almost make up the other half. So now everyone thinks cyber, they think people are attacking us. That's not always the case. You can make a mistake. You can make, like Brett said, you can make an errors and omissions, a mistake, and it accidentally releases out. And the average day it takes to detect a breach is on average around 170 to 191 days. And I'll talk a little bit later why that's important. So when I first started in 2007, we were putting this product together for a major carrier, and we were writing schools in California. That's kind of where we were targeting. And the school came in with a breach. What happened was they took their clerical worker aside and they said, we want to update our summer reading program list for all the students. So here's an Excel spreadsheet, here's all the names, just copy and paste, put them on postcards, send them to the students' houses. The clerical worker did exactly what they said, didn't even think twice to remove the social security numbers to each child as it was sent out. So the key thing with that though is cyber was so brand new then that the actual policy wasn't even triggered because it wouldn't respond to anyone underneath the age of 18. So with cyber, it's a whole new game we're dealing with as far as insurance. If you have a general liability policy, a property policy, those are apples to apples. You're really looking at the same things over and over. With cyber, everyone has these new ways of sublimiting coverage or doing something different. So you really want to be careful. Oh, I think I passed one. Nope, okay. So cyber liability policy responds to both first and third party claims. It's going to hold your hand through the whole process. A separate policy form with full limits dedicated to just the breach. When cyber first started, they would be an add-on to a current policy for like $100,000 or $50,000, and it only respond to a third party action lawsuit. So now we have these designated policies just to respond various areas affected by a cyber breach. So we're going to get into the basics. If you do have a current cyber policy, in these next two slides, you should have each and every one of those things. If you do not, this should be the bare minimum of what you should consider, and it's very realistic. And the first one is going to be the first party post-breach response. This is the forensic investigation, proper notification of affected individuals, credit card monitoring, and establishing a call center. And then you have third party. This is coverage for financial damages to clients resulting from a security breach of your data or data for which you are responsible. Now, when we deal with credit cards, if you're a business and you're accepting credit cards and you think someone's going to sue you, you think, oh, it's the customer for losing their information. How costly can that be? Well, as we were talking about PCI DSS, the governing body of the credit cards, what they do is they run all those fraudulent charges, they rack them to one big claim because they're not a charity, they're not going to be paying for it, and then they send it to your business. And on top of that, they're going to charge you $5 to reissue every new card to their customers. So that's where the third-party action lawsuit can be. Business interruption, this is a reimbursement for your reduction in profit during a system outage or period. If you're heavily involved with online sales and your online website is down for a duration, they'll look at your profits for the previous week, previous year, and reimburse you for any lost revenue during that time. And the system damage, rectification costs for retrieving, restoring, or replacing any of your computer programs. Insurance 101, if you have a house that's worth $100,000, they're not going to all of a sudden burns down, they're not going to build you a house for $1 million. They're going to get you back to where you were before, but they're also going to provide you services on how to defend yourself in the future. So about 3 or 4 years ago, cyber threats and extortion was the highest thing we were seeing. Most of these hackers were having much more success. Instead of targeting a target, no pun intended, they would attack small to mid-sized firms that they could easily get in, encrypt the files, or just bombard them, and then just make a couple grand and get out. One client of mine, about 5 or 6 years ago, he was a retired engineer for General Motors, and he was working as a consultant. And his computer was hacked, his laptop. And it required Bitcoin. He paid the Bitcoin so fast. They only wanted, I think, $1,500. And the hackers, when they're on this, they don't even look at the data really they don't even care. To them, you're just locked out. We just want you to pay the money. He had future blueprints to GM models for the next 3 to 5 years that were worth millions of dollars. So that was the one guy. And everyone asked, well, how do you know if you pay them that they're going to give you your information back? And if you think about it, it's a business model that we have to believe it or else it won't work. So if they don't give us our information back, it'll quickly spread and then no one will pay. So they have no interest in the data. They just want the money and then give you back to your systems. Multimedia, intellectual property rights infringement, defamation, misappropriation of content, trade secrets. So the multimedia is going to round out and provide all the content on your website. And if the newest trend that happened, I think this is going to happen a lot more moving forward, is that ESPN no longer has a comment section on any of their articles. It was a guilty pleasure of mine. If I was bored, I would go on an article and you quickly go to the comment section and there is a fight so quickly and easily. I mean, it gets nasty. And like I said, guilty pleasure. But ESPN finally said, we're done. We're not doing it. We don't need this exposure. We don't need people calling each other people's names and us being held accountable for something that's on here. So you might see Yahoo and some other ones start going that way because they're not having any issues with it. Cybercrime, unauthorized electronic funds transfer, theft of money, or other financial assets. Crime is the key word. We're going to talk about something here in a second that is similar to crime, but you'll see why. And then public relations, crisis and reputation management. And like Brent was saying, where it was underneath the surface, that is a main component to this, is the PR expense that is providing an insuring agreement to your business. It's getting out to the community and letting them know, listen, we know something happened, but we are being proactive. We are on top of this, and we want to earn your trust to continue to do business with us. So this is going to be it, and this is what is new to the cyber insurance world. And basically, cyber insurance is evolving so quickly. We have insuring agreements on policies now that weren't there a year ago. If you bought a cyber insurance policy in the last 3 years, and I'm seeing this all the time, and you just renew, you're making a mistake. Because not only is there more coverage out there, but there's more better enhancements in wording, and it's quickly evolving with that. So the key items, full prior acts, what does that mean? So if you do not currently have a policy, or you do want to buy a policy, you really want full prior acts. That means that coverage goes back to the inception of your company. Well, why is that important? Well, one of the first slides I had says it takes 191 days to detect a breach. So if you decide to buy an insurance policy today, and it's not full prior acts, you're basically saying, okay, we might have had a breach 191 days ago, and if it happened in that time span, you're not going to have any coverage. So full prior acts is a key one. Insured identity theft. This is the actual identity theft of the company. The biggest claim we had was a Twitter account for Burger King in 2008, 2009, was making drug references and name calling, slander against McDonald's, Wendy's. I mean, it was funny, but no one thinks, oh, you know, Burger King, Twitter, who cares? Well, the class action lawsuit actually came out of, who do you think subscribes to Burger King's Twitter account? 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. So when mommy and daddy see little Johnny making drug references and saying, hey, where'd you learn that, or whatever, all of a sudden there became this class action suit against Burger King for allowing their children to be able to see stuff like that. So it really takes the identity of the company itself. It's not individuals. The newest one, last 2 years, is social engineering. And this is why I really stress you have to be careful with an insurance policy. One of the first companies to come out with social engineering came out 2 years ago. And they put it clear as day, social engineering, on their insuring agreement. And social engineering, what that means is you were tricked into willfully giving money away. So someone, head of the company, emails accounting and says, we forgot to make payment to Allcom. We need to wire that money ASAP. So what they do is, they say, you're the boss, they wire the money, and then it's gone. But crime policies don't respond because there's not any theft. You were just tricked to willfully give it away. So this company is just boasting, social engineering, we're giving it. Come to about 2 months later, I'm reading the form, and I said, guys, you guys have a major issue here. There's a condition in the policy that states, if the person who emails you, accounting, you don't call him to verify he emailed you, there's no coverage. Well, then what's the coverage for? If I call Brent and I say, hey, why do you want me to mail this money away? I didn't send that to you. Okay, good, done, click. So they were boasting something that didn't exist. Now we have policies with full sublimits and limits, dedicated social engineering. There's no hiccups, there's no any trickery or loopholes like that. Another one is most insurance policies are worldwide as long as a claim is brought within the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. Well, why is that? We only want to deal with their jurisdiction and their laws. There are policies, especially Lloyd's of London, they're the best policies you can get that's true worldwide coverage. And what that says is we don't care where the claim comes anywhere in the world, we are going to respond on your behalf and we're going to defend you. And that is going to be very, very interesting with the European Union passing new laws on how that we have to be compliant with how we deal with their customer information. Because if a claim comes from England right now, most of those policies will not respond. And then blanket additional insured. Anyone we're doing business with on their behalf, if there's a contract, they're automatically included under our cyber agreement in the fact that we're lose their information. And then new coverage, to end it, subcontractor vicarious liability. This is really good for IT companies or tech companies. When you're doing business on behalf of someone else, it's your mistake. The coverage is automatically going to extend to anyone you're doing work with. A brand new one is contingent bodily injury property damage. Healthcare industry, anything to deal with health records could lead to bodily injury or property damage. So a general liability form, if you slip and fall, it's going to respond. But now if I have a patient and all of a sudden someone hacks someone's records and says they're not allergic to such and such, and then the doctor administers the medicine and they die, there's really no coverage for that. Well, that's built into here. Or automation, robotics. If they're controlling systems and all of a sudden the system makes property damage or hurts someone on the line, that's where the coverage is built in for that. Very rare, only 1 or 2 policies are offering this right now. Intellectual property rights infringement. These last 2 ones are really important. Almost 90% of the cyber policies today respond, the trigger is personal information. If you have personal information of others. If you are doing business with other companies though, what if you have their trade secrets? What if you have their copy or their IP and you lose that out of yours? So one of my biggest customers is right down the street and they have all these formulas for these recipes. And if they lost these recipes, the brands would sue them for millions upon millions of dollars. So no other policies will really respond except for one that provides the intellectual property of your customers. If you're able to have a breach, they will respond. And finally, innocent non-disclosure. One company in the last 6 months came out with this. My warning usually to insurance agents who were my clients back then was, my warning is the longer a cyber application is, the worse it is for your insured. Every question you write down, you answer, becomes a warranty, and that you can be held accountable. If it's not answered correctly, there could be no coverage. So a company finally said and came out, a condition in their policy, unless you blatantly mislead us or lie on the application, we cannot revoke coverage from defending you. And they're literally saying, we're not looking for any way to get off this claim as long as you made an honest mistake. And a lot of the companies that we do represent, the application's 1, 2 pages, maybe 5 questions. And it's really a simple process. All right? So I think that's going to do it for me. Hopefully it wasn't too fast. And if you guys do have any questions at all throughout the night, please feel free. I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, one point, Charles. So I think what we were trying to do is attack this from 2 different standpoints. There's the what can you do proactively, right, to try and address some of these issues and mitigate them to a certain extent? Because, and hopefully you can answer this.
Yeah.
But if I'm a company and I just put my head in the sand, I do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Am I still going to get a policy that covers me for everything?
You will. So here's the way I try to explain it. So there's the proactive and then there's the reactive. And the reactive is all hell breaks loose. We want to make your company whole. As an underwriter who's been doing cyber for the last 11 years specifically, I take your proactive measures, and especially working with someone with Allcom and Brent, and I make a narrative to the insurance company saying, listen, when you ask them questions and you rate these policies, you guys are rating them like they're all the same. They're not. We're using proactive measures. We're going to reduce your insurance costs because of your being proactive, and you have security controls in place. And then we use that to tailor the best coverage with the best premium. So on average, if I see a cyber policy and I'm working with someone who's being proactive, I'm usually coming in 50% less. It's just night and day, because a lot of the times the narrative given to the underwriters is literally, here's an application, that's it. Where I try to dig deep and try to say, okay, you're working with companies to prevent this. This is much less of an exposure.
Any questions besides avoid Qdoba apparently?
It's not there anymore. But Castro Cantina or Cran Castro at 16 Rochester, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really good. Argentinian infused.
So we still have some time here. We have obviously a lot of food up there. There's also, I saw some strawberries that look like over there. So if you want some dessert, we have the bar here if you guys want another grab a drink. So Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Appreciate you coming out and grab us or pull us aside if you have any questions that you want to talk about. If it's a little more personal, you don't want to volunteer that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as your password.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you.
Can you provide this for homes?
There you go, sir. Thank you very much.